I'm going to hand straight over to you, Noam. Noam said we can ask questions as we go through, so let's kick on.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Noam, and I just recently founded a company called Sky Valley Ambient Computing. And the big vision is basically, if you've ever watched Star Trek, so the dream would be to build a Star Trek computer that businesses could use in their own locations. If you haven't watched Star Trek, so it's essentially, you can think about like compute like a local utility, right? So if you go into a room today, you can flick the switch, the light switch on and off. You can open the tap, you'll get water. And trying to imagine what if intelligence and compute could be this way, right? What if you could just walk into a room and you had like immediate access to compute that was connected to everything, and it was reactive to what you need and when you need it. This is obviously a long-term vision and not one which we're either culturally or well-funded enough to tackle today. So when we're walking it back, we try to ask ourselves, what are the fundamental things which are needed for this kind of development? So hardware is an obvious one, and there's a lot of work right now being done on hardware from new robotics companies and some driving cars. So this is going a nice way. But one thing that I've identified is also software, and specifically is how we build software, but also how we treat software. Because until now, we were used to having software in a very strict lifecycle, right? So I'm an engineer and I write code, and I put that code somewhere in cold storage, and I create a program for it, and I ship that program to people. And that's what people use and see, right? And for many reasons, this is built almost in a paranoid way of it has to be the same as I built it. It has to behave exactly the same way as I built it for many reasons, right? You think about safety, reliability, brand awareness, all of those things are causes for you wanting your software to be predictable, right? And so we've modeled our whole software lifecycle around it being predictable and exactly as I planned it to be. But something fundamentally changed, right? And so AI came to the scene, and I'm not giving you any secrets here, right? AI is changing how we work, right? And specifically in the code space, right now, how it's being used is it's helping make engineers more productive, which is great. And you have companies printing money and everyone's happy. But what bothered me about this fact is that it's actually a very fundamental fact of how we use computers and treat software. And what I mean by that is our whole life cycle is modeled under the fact that humans are doing it, right? Humans are doing the work of building the software, and it's slow and it's expensive, right? And this is how we think of software. This is how we ship software. That's the whole delivery model of Fortune 500 companies, right? And now this very fundamental fact change, right? It's no longer just humans writing software. AI, for the first time in history, can write software and solve, unseen logical problems, right? And it's not that we didn't have no-code systems before, right? We used to have no-code systems for many years, but the no-code systems were always just as robust as someone built them. That is, someone had to build those systems in a very generic way. You can think of like Microsoft 365, for example, one of those things. And if I build it generic enough and robust enough, then it can be used in many, many use cases, right? But it still had limitations because someone had to plan this. What are those use cases? What are those constraints? And so with AI, if you think about like AI writing code without needing us, suddenly we have an opportunity to have true no code, as in, what if the software could react in real time to a problem it's never seen before, to a problem that was never planned for it to solve? But maybe it can, right? What if the software could self-correct on the spot to solve those issues? And the problem is, it goes very much against how we think about the life cycle. So if we look at the life cycle again, like we said, it's very step-based, right? It's skills-driven, right? I'm an engineer, I'm a designer, I'm a product manager, all those tasks. And each one of them has responsibilities. And when you look at the org chart inside, companies, it's not only responsibilities, it's also power and politics and control, right? And the second fact is, we're moving away from this skills-driven thing, right? And it's becoming more of an intent-driven thing. And what I mean by that, if you look at the most cutting-edge companies, you see these personas starting to merge, because now they can create actual systems that work. Maybe they're not the most reliable, maybe not the most robust, but it's still generating code, right? You see new personas like design engineer, right? A designer who now can also create and build systems and has some engineering knowledge, right? Or product builder, which is a similar persona, but based on a product manager who can now build. And so what happens when we think about that everyone can build, right? And what if everyone could actually build good, robust, healthy systems and not just toys that would have to go hand off to engineer to rebuild it again, right? And so that's what's happening right now, because we're using a very nascent technology, right? We have to remember AI has been around for a long time, but LLMs have been around for just maybe 3 years in how we know them. And technology-wise, it's very early, right? So technology cycles are much longer than 3 years. So there is a place for maturing, there is a place for improvement, and it'll only improve, right? One of the mathematical principles behind LLMs is something called gradient descent. And one of the famous scientists said, I think it was on Twitter, he said, gradient descent can write code better than you, right? And it's only the beginning, yeah. And so what my company is looking to do is think how we can change the software lifecycle to make adaptive software a reality, right? And the big difference here in adaptive software is, one, you must capture intent, right? Nothing in how we build software today captures intent. What you have is a bunch of design documents, maybe you have PRDs, maybe you have specs, and they all live somewhere. Maybe it's in your Google Drive, maybe it's somewhere else. And then you have the software itself, and those two things are always disconnected. And it's a pain, and it's a pain that's been existing in the industry for long. And the second thing is, our software is not runtime aware. And what that means is it was designed to run in a very precise manner, right? Maybe it reports back to us when something goes wrong. Maybe the user reports back to us when something goes wrong, but the software doesn't know, quote unquote, what's really happening when someone uses it. And it can't react to things that happen when someone uses it. Because if you think about software, you designed it to run in a certain way. But like I said, who knows how people are going to use it, right? You're always surprised by how people are going to use your software. You're always surprised by the edge cases that make it fail, right? And so instead of having to go through the whole loop back to reporting to you and you rebuilding it and shipping a new version, what if we can imagine a world where AI can sit somewhere locally where the customer is using the software and correct those things on the fly, right? What if the customer is asking to deal with a new use case? It wasn't designed for this use case, but it has the flexibility to accommodate for it. Or what if an error happened and it's not a critical error? It's not something deep down that needs like a database migration. What if it's just like a small bug which can be fixed with 3 lines, but it's a blocker right now for the user? And what if AI could fix it on the spot? Yeah. So it sounds nice, and I think it's a great idea as well. But it's also changing our, like I said, how we regard the life cycle. Because right now, if I go and try to sell that to a Fortune 500 company, they'll think I'm on drugs, right? Because it goes against everything that the life cycle was designed for. Yeah, Peter.
That's very interesting, fascinating, really. And I can see where you're going to. I mean, I've been involved. We talked about AI back in the 1990s when I had 64 kilobyte memory to, put high-level software in. And I can see where AI is used as to actually help people with tasks, to make tasks similar, such as what I'm looking at is where I'm looking at surveillance, looking at cameras in pods and being able to assess what's going on. Well, introduce AI and it can be sped up and, done infinitely well, less reliance upon the human being. And I can see whereby, like you're right, where you say that you've always got this problem with software, and it was one you had way back because you have host machines, and then you're putting your software on that machine, but then the host machine saying, oh, we want to update the machine, and your software is geared towards running on a particular version of software. We had problems with that way back because you then had to, it forced you to look at your software and update your software to work on that new machine. And I can see where AI comes in there, in that it can, new host machine, new ideas. How does that flow through all the applications that are running on that host machine? And that's very good. And also with the new use cases, I'm thinking, I mean, could AI actually identify a use case that hasn't been spotted by the user? And that's perhaps where one of the things you're looking at.
Yeah, and even if you look at the fundamental things that we use today, right? If you look at the Windows operating system, right? Again, way back, Windows was created as like a convenience over commodity hardware, right? We used to have all these different computers, and they had their own proprietary hardware, right? You had like Osborne and that, and this and that, right? And they all had their own operating system. And that was a pain in the arse because every time you had to ship a new version of your program, you had to rewrite for all of those platforms, right? And you had all this type of hardware that's going on as well. And who knows how it works. And then Microsoft had it big because they said, let's create this abstract layer over all the kinds of hardware that you can support so people can write an application once, right? And not have to deal with the hardware layer and adapt to that. Thing is, if you look at this vision and you say, if now AI can write software on the fly, do you even need that layer of abstraction? And what I mean by that, what if we can imagine a world where, you need to insert a new GPU into your computer and it needs a driver, right? So do you wait for Microsoft to support it? Or can your agent like take the spec from NVIDIA or something and write that driver on the fly tailored to how your computer is working? Does that make sense? And so there's actually a YC company working on this right now. A Y Combinator company is building an AI agent that can take hardware specs, right, and write drivers for it just automatically. Yeah. And then you ask yourself, okay, what else in our life is written as this convenience? Because it was actually a necessity, right? It was a necessity to adapt to different types of hardware, and so I don't have to rewrite it every time I have a new thing shipping. But what's not true anymore, right? So if you ask me, this fixation on the very static software lifecycle is not true anymore, right? Obviously very early, but still not true. This type of abstraction layer, again, over hardware, we have to rethink it. What if we don't need it anymore? There's many things which I think if we look into the why it was designed to begin with, and we match that together with the new technology we have, we can ask, is this really necessary still? Can we swap it out for something better?
Yeah. Is it the concern I have is not necessarily for myself, but the wider world, in that people think, oh God, we're going to let AI is going to run loose. It's going to build all these robots, and they're going to take over the world, and us humans will be slaves to the robots. I can see in most applications, like in the one I've been talking about, it's contained within a box. I'm asking it to do to help me with this function. If you're like taking away the boundaries and allowing AI to expand with its own thought process, is that a concern?
It's an interesting question, because the way we see it, we think there'll be three software markets, right? You'll have a software market which is similar like today, which is static, absolutely static, and there's a good reason for that, right? Like I said, there are many very, very serious systems out there which you do not want dynamicity in them, right? Banking, defense, utilities, all of those, right? They're not ready for this yet, and let's leave them alone. They can stay put for a while. And then you have like the very extreme version, which is what you're imagining, which is, what if software has no source? What if it has no limits? And there's already examples of systems that work this way, where you can go and you can prompt a chatbot and it just creates something from nothing, right? And how long does it live? Who knows, right? You can think about it like disposable software, right? Malleable software. And those are nice, but I don't think they're practical for every use case. They may be practical for some use case. If I'm thinking about like super commoditized, SaaS businesses, super commoditized consumer software, they can probably live this way, right? If you can ask the AI to create it and it create it in one shot and it's perfect, why do you need a company and the team to build this? You don't, right? And I think where the middle ground lives, and what my bet is the major market would be, is a hybrid. And what I mean by hybrid is that you as the creator, right? If we live in this world where we can capture your intent as you're building, right? We can remember what the purpose of the software is and what the boundary of the software is. And so you have this constant core, which you can think about like a box which can't change inside the middle of the software. And those are the rules and the guardrails and like the memory of what is it that it's meant to be doing and what can't it be doing. But around that, you can have soft peripheries, right? Which are the parts that can adapt and can change, right? And so what if you as a software creator could also give those types of rules, essentially, to say, here's where you can be dynamic, here's where you can't. And it's sort of like a soft, like I said, a soft periphery over a strong, unchangeable core, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
quick point.
Sorry.
We have a lot of people within the startup to stand-up community who are raising money to build software platforms that they may have budgeted, you know, £200,000 to £300,000 for. Would you say some of this is going to alleviate that?
Absolutely, 100%. So what it's already alleviating is hyper personalization, right? And so we interview, we started a community of people who use AI to build software, and it's people from all walks of life. Most of them not engineers, right? And so you see a few different versions. You see hyper personalization, right? We had like a person who says they're like a product manager in the day-to-day, and they said, my wife and I needed a co-parenting application. We couldn't find one that suits us. The one that suits us is too expensive, so I built one with those things. Then you build it, right? And maybe only he uses it, right? Maybe another 2 people in the world would use it and find it useful, but it works for him. And it took him maybe, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 to build it with one of those AI platforms, right? And so there's those cases. Then the cases of the very cookie cutter things. Like I said, we have so much software which has been built over and over again for just different verticals, right? You can think of it like SaaS and CRUD apps and things like that. And those are definitely very, very accessible to AI building. I'm not saying AI can build it perfectly in one go and then scale it and support 1 million users, right? Because it's not there yet. But the initial part of just getting it off the ground is almost solved. And I say it when I'm working with my co-founder, she's not an engineer, but she's contributing to production code, right? Without me having to look at it in places which aren't critical yet.
Peter.
Would it be useful if Noam was put in touch with Neil and his Reading University organisation?
That would be brilliant. Yeah, I think that would be a brilliant idea.
Happy to, yeah.
Yeah, Neil's formed a group with Reading University to look at AI on a wider basis. And I think your contribution would be fantastic for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, hopefully we'll raise money sometime next year, hopefully higher. And I'm also looking at new graduates as well, because there's really exciting opportunities too.
Excellent. Any additional questions, guys? Andre, Dan?
I just want to say, yeah, very interesting. I thought, even though I haven't got any questions, really good presentation, really insightful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, likewise. Just more or less chatting rather than I've developed a property-based networking platform. We're just about to launch this into Apple and Google over the next sort of few days. That has been a challenge. I must say, we've been on this journey for about 3 years. We've got some great developers from based out of Silicon Valley. But what they've been saying to me is, the real estate industry, we've had to be really careful where it comes to AI, because the real estate industry, you have a lot of new what we call sort of new kids on the block coming into the industry, the ones that are going to run our industry in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years time. you know, I'll be finished by then, hopefully. And the and what we've tried to do is we understand that AI to put into our platform is really important, but you've also got to take into account that a lot of people within the real estate industry haven't been brought up in this technology world that we live in today. Now, I understand, I mean, you know, what's really passionate for us is building a platform so that the younger generation can meet the people that they need to meet to further their business potential. We've got a lot of, we've got a lot of users and members, you know, on our platform that are very much the older generation. So we've had to build our platform in a really simple way to service those ones who find technology so frustrating. I mean, I know one of the, you know, one of the biggest agents in London. You know, he's called the godfather of property. But you know, this guy's 70 years old, but he's the most respected man, you know, within the luxury property market in London. And you know, I showed him a version of our application, and I must have had his attention for 5 minutes, and he goes, "I can't, I don't understand it. I just," and it's really, really, really simple. So it's just sort of a conversation, really. You know how and when you adopt that AI into your businesses or into your platforms. Obviously, for you know, we also and forgive me if I'm wrong. Look, I'm not a tech guy. I'm a property guy. I've just brought on the people who can develop and build what my vision is. But you know what we've been saying is we want to put certain AI into this. We don't want to overcomplicate it. We want to make it easy. But you also need the data for that AI to work.
Yeah.
So we've got to build that platform with the data, with people that don't necessarily understand all the technicalities behind AI. Make it simple, build up the users, build up the platform both in the UK and globally. And then as you go along, you know, the problem is I think everybody's in a massive rush here. You know, the buzzword globally is AI. If you're not using AI within your business, within your platform, all right, everybody's getting really scared that they're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
But nobody sort of understands that we are you know, as Peter was saying, he's been working on, you know, this thing since the 1990s. But, you know, AI is only really, you know, coming into its form. And look, we all know technology is growing at sort of, what is it, 20 years or 5 years every year or something, you know, whatever it may be. But you know, it's just a conversation, really. I don't really have a question. It's just my sort of outlook on it.
I think you're right, and there's always a long tail, right? There's always a long tail of consumers. If you take like business book, a very good one called Crossing the Chasm, an amazing marketing book, right, about how you have those different phases of acceptance of product, right? You have like the cutting edge innovators who are happy to try things, right? You have the early adopters, the late adopters, the laggards, and so forth. And you have to know who you're building.
Just pause, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's frozen.
Yeah. Just getting
technology.
To the bit.
Technology. Yeah. There you go.
It's the AI. It shut him off.
Yeah. Wonderful world of technology, eh?
I did hear a theory about AI in that the other day. Oh, he's back. I'll let him carry on. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Shift to-
Technology.
Yeah, no, I shut you off.
Where did I cut off? Sorry.
Crossing the chasm.
Right. So it gives a very nice breakdown of who your persona is, right? Is the persona an innovator, an early adopter, a late adopter, a laggard, right? And you have to know who that persona is to not overshoot them, undershoot them, because otherwise you're marking something wrong for the wrong person with the wrong adaptability metrics. And it's true, you know, there's that long tail that you have to recognize it. And AI is definitely being used as a marketing term. Don't get me wrong, right? I have AI on my washing machine. It's ridiculous, right? I don't know what it does. As long as it keeps it code, I'm fine, right? And if you ask me, the best kind of AI is when people don't know it's there, right? When the software just works, when it's an amazing experience, right? And who cares if it's being used with AI or if it's being used like with hamsters on a wheel, right? The software has to be good and the experience has to be good. And that's really up to the people who create the software, right? To deliver on this, right? And not put AI just for it being AI, right?
Yeah, interesting though.
I've actually got to hop because I've got a 10 o'clock, but
So
I'm
I
going
have
to
as
hand
well,
over to
Ollie.
Peter. I'm going to hand over to Peter.
Yeah, just
Thank you very
two
much,
quick points.
But Noam, thank you very much. I've got to shoot off as well. Ollie, thanks a lot.
No worries.
You're
Have a
welcome.
great weekend,
Thank you.
Ollie and Andre.
Cheers. Thanks, guys. Thanks very
Bye.
much. Bye. Bye.
Yeah, my point was just about in defence of the old person. It's not necessarily the age of the person. It's more about their background and what they do. Engineers, no problem or people using software most of the time, not really a problem. It's if you've got people who've, you know, got, if you like, a comfortable life, like it sounds like this guy that Andre mentioned has. But the other thing is about change management. It's like with anything, when you're introducing new things, you've got to bring on board. You've got to use the people that are the users and bring them on board with it when you're designing it. I mean, it's like many years ago, I actually designed a database for a system that has been using T cards for managing stock and things. So, you know, you speak to the user, say, what do you want to see? What do you use? What do you want to see on the screen? How can we make it easier for you? It's basic change management, nothing else.
Yeah, knowing your customer, exactly.
Thanks, Noam. I've really enjoyed that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.